Turn to page 2 in your LSI workbook. Page 2 provides the instructions on how to take the LSI. Read these sections carefully. When you understand how you are to respond to the questions on the answer sheet number 1, then begin to complete the two-part questionnaire. When you are finished ranking the endings for all 12 sentences, go to sheet 2 to calculate your scores. There you will add up your scores for each shape and then enter your scores for each shape at the top of sheet 2. When you've added up all scores, proceed to page 3, where you will enter your scores on this graph. The scores will be placed on these lines of the graph. When you are finished plotting your scores, you are to connect the dots, which will form a kite-shaped pattern. Do not be concerned if your kite pattern is not symmetrical or is lopsided. Stop this recording and take the inventory. When you have finished the inventory and plotted the scores on page 3, resume the recording. Let's see what these scores mean. Look on page 5. There are two ways to perceive or take in information and two ways to process or deal with information. Let's look at the ways that you perceive information. The concrete experience is perceiving information through feelings and intuition. People who take in information from the concrete experience perspective like to learn from specific experiences and like to work with others. People who perceive information in the abstract conceptualization prefer to perceive information through thinking and analyzing ideas logically. They rely on systematic planning and love research. They're often more comfortable working independently. Look at the two dots on your graph that fall on this line. The one that is further from the center indicates which way you prefer to perceive information, through feelings and intuition or through analyzing logically. If the dot is far from the center, this is a strong preference. If the dot is close to the center, it is a preference, but you don't rely on that mode of perceiving information exclusively. Next, let's look how you process information. The observations and reflection mode of processing information is learning through reflection. People who prefer to process or handle information through reflective observation like to view issues from many different angles. Reflection and looking for the meaning of things is key. On the other hand, people who prefer to process information through active experimentation prefer learning by doing. They have the ability to get things done and are often risk takers. Look at the two dots on your graph that fall on this line. The one that is further from the center indicates which way you prefer to process information, through observation or by doing. If the dot is far from the center, this is a strong preference. If the dot is close to the center, it is a preference, but you do not rely on that mode of processing information exclusively. Now, find the dot out of the 4 that you plotted on the graph that is furthest away from the center. This indicates your preference of where you like to start a learning experience. Although you are writing life learning papers starting with a concrete experience, people will first engage in a learning experience with any of the 4 of the cycle, perhaps doing research and data collecting first, or wanting to be reflective first. This also may have meaning for you as you write your life learning papers. There may be sections that you write that are much easier to do than others. This could be because of where you like to start a learning experience. Next, you're going to determine what your preferred learning style is based on the 4 scores you just plotted. Turn to page 7. Your learning style is a combination of a preferred way of processing information and a preferred way of perceiving information. Read the directions on page 7 and then proceed to plot your scores on page 8. Stop this recording. When you have completed plotting your scores on page 8, Resume the recording. You should have two intersecting lines in one of the four quadrants of the graph. If the intersecting lines are far from the center and in the white area, this is a learning style you rely upon heavily. If the two intersecting lines are close to the center or in the gray area, this is a preferred learning style, but you do not rely on it heavily and are more balanced in all four modes of learning. Let's see what all this means. Now remember, there is no one learning style that is better than another. In fact, all of the learning styles have strengths and all have weaknesses. People who fall within the diverging quadrant have a learning style that is a combination of taking in information through intuition and feelings and processing information through reflective observation. The strengths of this learning style are that these people are creative, are great at brainstorming, love looking for options, and do well working in small groups or collaborative work. The weaknesses, since their less preferred modes of learning are logical analysis and application, they can get bogged down or sidetracked by overthinking or gathering useless information. The assimilating quadrant represents people who have a preferred learning style that is a combination of processing information through observation and reflection and taking in information through thinking, analyzing, problem solving, and research. The strengths: planning, doing research, and usually these people are very patient. But there are also weaknesses. Because people who have this preferred learning style are looking for the right answer, they can often get paralyzed with indecision. Also, they can be more concerned with the theory of something rather than the practical application. In the converging quadrant, people who have this preferred learning style like to take in information through logical analysis and process information by actually doing the learning. Their strengths are they are problem solvers, decision makers, and are good at making plans. Their weaknesses lie in the areas of creativity and taking risks. So, plans can halt, and frustration results if it is perceived that all the ducks are not in a row. The last preferred learning style is in the accommodating quadrant. People with this preferred learning style have a combination of taking in information through intuition and feelings and processing information by doing or hands-on. The strengths of these learners are the ability to get things done, they are risk takers, they're adaptable, and practical. The weakness is that for people with this preferred learning style, they are more concerned with the application rather than the theory. Therefore, projects can be half-baked or incomplete because of not analyzing the data. So what meaning does this have for us on a day-to-day basis? You work and live with people with varying preferred learning styles. In fact, they may even have a learning style that is in direct opposition to your own. Let's look at an example of how that can impact a real-life learning situation. This is Lisa. Lisa has a strong learning preference in the accommodating quadrant. She is creative, imaginative, can think of all kinds of options, and is willing to take risks. Here is one of Lisa's ideas. She thinks that the living room needs to be painted. So, with her preferred learning style of being creative, risk-taking, and getting things done, she grabs her keys, heads to the door, with full throttle motivation to buy the paint and to get painting. However, there's a roadblock in her way. This is Philip. Philip's preferred learning style is in the assimilating area. While he is not interested in doing the painting himself, he's very concerned that enough information has been gathered before the painting begins. He wants to know, What's the best kind of paint to use? Now, do we want flat, semi-gloss, gloss, eggshell? What are the best ways to prep the walls? He has heard about a new painter's tape, and maybe he can find a YouTube video on how to use it. Then, what about the plan? There has to be a plan. Lisa and Philip. Two different ways of addressing a learning situation. Now, both in high anxiety. Lisa just wants to get her done, while Philip is concerned that it is done right. Both of these people have strengths and both have weaknesses. In order to help this relationship, both should learn how to strengthen or develop other learning styles. Look on page 11. Find a learning style that is not your preferred learning style. Here are several examples of how you can develop other kinds of learning styles. By endeavoring to learn new learning styles, you will be more of a well-rounded learner and will be able to function when you butt up against an opposite to your preferred learning style, or if you are asked to perform in another kind of learning style. On your own, continue to work through the workbook. You will find new ways of understanding yourself and others through understanding adult learning styles through the Learning Style Inventory.